You ever wonder why misinformation works so well, even on people who are, smart and careful? Today, we're not going to just talk about it in theory. We're going to take apart a real-world example, piece by piece, to really see the subtle ways deception works, and more importantly, the deeper reasons we're all kind of vulnerable to it. All right, let's get into it.
Okay, so take a look at this. It's a pretty powerful statistic, right? 5 in 10 Americans get misinformed on social media. I mean, that's half the population. It feels right, doesn't it? It sounds super alarming and it paints this really clear picture of a huge crisis. And, of course, to back it up, you've got the source, Pew Research. I mean, they're one of the most respected, nonpartisan data organizations out there. So, at this point, most of us would just accept it. We'd see that and move on. The claim seems solid. The source is credible. Case closed, right? Well, this is where it gets interesting. This is where our investigation really starts. What if the problem isn't actually the source? What if it's a tiny, almost invisible change that happens somewhere along the way? What if the trust we automatically give to a name like Pew Research is the very thing that makes us so vulnerable? So let's pull back the curtain here and see what it actually takes to check a claim like this today. We're going to follow the breadcrumbs, retracing the steps of an investigation that started with this exact graph, and believe me, it ended with a pretty surprising discovery. And finding the truth here was, well, it was a whole digital detective story. First, you search the graph's title online. Nothing. Then you do a reverse image search and you just see it being shared everywhere. Finally, you have to dig past all that noise to find some data aggregator site, and only then can you find the original study. And let's be real, who has time for all that when you're just scrolling through your feed? That difficulty, that's part of the trap. And here it is. This is the whole shebang, the crucial discovery. On the left, you see the title that was everywhere. On the right, the actual title from the real Pew Research study. See the difference? The original study had zero to do with misinformation. It was just about where people get their news. The entire story was flipped just by adding 3 letters and a couple of parentheses. Miss. And here's the really insidious part. This tiny, tiny change was so effective that even content creators, people whose whole job is to fight misinformation, they fell for it. They shared it. It just goes to show how easily a false story can grow when you anchor it to a trusted name. It's a perfect trap. Okay, so we've seen the how. We see how simple it is to create and spread something like this. But honestly, that's only half the story. The much bigger and I think more important question is why. Why are we so ready to believe it? Why does a statistic like that just feel right to us without us even checking? To answer that, we really have to zoom out. It turns out our vulnerability isn't some new thing from the internet age. It's a product of something Dr. Milan Toma calls the economy of distrust. And this idea, it's a brilliant way to understand the deep historical roots of why we're so skeptical today. So, the basic idea is this. Our current climate of distrust didn't just pop up overnight. Nope. It's been built over a long, long history of very real institutional failures and betrayals. Think of it like this. All those past events dug a deep, deep well of public skepticism. And now, that skepticism has become a valuable resource, a commodity even, that people can exploit and make money from. I mean, think about some of these historical moments. Back in the 1920s, people were literally sold radioactive water as a health drink. From the 30s all the way to the 70s, you had the Tuskegee study, where doctors cruelly withheld treatment from black men. And then, much more recently, the opioid crisis, driven by drug companies that just flat out misled everyone. These aren't small mistakes. These are massive betrayals of public trust. And that is the absolute key here. These things aren't just footnotes in a history book. Dr. Toma calls them foundational investments in our modern distrust. It's like each one of those betrayals deposited more skepticism into the bank, and it's been collecting interest for decades. All of that created the perfect, fertile soil where that fake graph we saw earlier could so easily start to grow. Okay, so if that history laid the foundation, who's building on top of it today? How is all that deep-seated distrust being actively used and magnified right now, for profit and for influence? Well, that brings us to what we can call the modern amplifiers, all the systems that are cashing in on that distrust. Think about social media algorithms. They couldn't care less about the truth. They're designed to reward outrage and emotion because that's what keeps us clicking. Or the wellness industry, which often makes its money by saying, hey, don't trust them, trust us. They're all tapping into that same deep well of skepticism for their own benefit, whether it's clicks or cash. So, Dr. Toma's point is that our vulnerability isn't from just one thing. It's a combination of things, kind of like a perfect storm. First, you have the deep wounds from historical trauma, especially for marginalized groups. Then, you pile on ongoing institutional failures that just prove over and over again that the system is broken. And finally, you get a total breakdown in clear, honest communication. You mix those three things together, you've got the perfect environment for misinformation to absolutely thrive.
Okay, so understanding the problem is huge, but it's not enough. The big question is, what can we actually do about it? Let's talk about the path forward. How do we even begin to rebuild trust and make ourselves a little more resilient to all this?
Right, and the solutions have to be just as big as the problem. This can't just be about you and me becoming better fact checkers. It's gotta be bigger. We're talking about demanding real transparency and accountability when our institutions mess up. It means teaching the next generation critical thinking and how to navigate this crazy digital world. And at the end of the day, it means we have to tackle the root causes, the systemic failures that created this whole economy of distrust to begin with. And really, this is the main takeaway. Getting better at spotting lies, that's just playing defense. The real goal here is to go on offense. It's about understanding the entire system, this whole economy of distrust, so we can start to change the actual environment that lets these lies spread like wildfire in the first place. You know, we started this journey with a tiny, subtle lie, just 3 little letters in parentheses. But it led us to a deep, complex system that's been built on decades of broken trust. And that leaves all of us with a challenge, really. Knowing what you know now, what's the next thing you're going to question? What headline? What assumption? What's it going to be?